Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast between KylePrime and ArgosZenith here on Metalopolis. Last time I checked, Kyle was part of the Prime team, so hopefully there hasn't been any changes. Kyle spawning over here at the 8 o'clock position as the blue Protoss player. Meanwhile, ArgosZenith spawning as the yellow Zerg at the 12 o'clock position. So this will be Protoss versus Zerg, one of those matchups that doesn't involve a Terran, where everyone believes Terran to be the overpowered race right now. I don't know if I quite agree with that, but there's no Terran in this matchup, so hopefully we won't have too many of those comments. An Overlord now moving out from ArgosZenith will try to scout out the 3 o'clock position, and we'll quickly see that KylePrime is not there. Now moving around the map, not exactly sure. Oh, Kyle wants to make sure that there is not an Overlord flying in from this direction. So by making sure that there's not an Overlord, he most likely knows that ArgosZenith is not spawning in this location at the 6 o'clock position. We now see a drone moving out, so the drone will come across this probe in just a second. So there we go, Peppy the probe and Daisy the drone passing each other by, as the drone will be able to head up this ramp and then gain some sight. We should be seeing perhaps a gateway coming in relatively soon, as we now are training more drones. There we go, there is that gateway, the standard 13 gateway, as this drone now trying to peck away at some damage. Back over here, we still see a probe from Kyle in the base of ArgosZenith. So we'll see what exactly that probe's going to do, as we now have a spawning pool coming in from Argos. So Argos now getting a spawning pool in this location. If you guys remember, in one of my recent replays, ArgosZenith did try to do a spine crawler rush here on Metalopolis, so we'll see if he tries to go for that same exact strategy or not. Oh, dropping down another assimilator, so Kyle making sure that there is not an assimilator for this drone to try to attach to. So Kyle opening up with a double gas. We'll see if he actually does try to saturate both of those assimilators, or if it's more just of a play to deny this one drone. Drone down to 24 hit points. Now constantly getting zapped by that one probe, and now we do see probes now going into one assimilator. The second assimilator still here. Kyle does not have enough minerals to warp in a cybernetics core just quite yet because of that early assimilator. That will put him down behind by 75 minerals, as this drone still wandering around on the inside of this base. I'm currently down to, I can't click on him fast enough, 9 hit points. So we'll take 2 zaps from that probe in order to deal any damage. Cybernetics core finally coming into play. That drone should probably try to return home, as we still have the probe coming in from Kyle. And Overlord now moving out. Zerglings will try to deal with it, and that drone will be able to return with a present in hand and try to drop it off at this hatchery. We now see a queen being trained, 2 queens being trained in fact, as a hatchery now being positioned over here momentarily, most likely, and now one Overlord sitting here. So we do have one Overlord over here by ArgosZenith. ArgosZenith leaving this Overlord perhaps back over here, trying to make sure that there is no play, no hidden tech buildings here or along the side. One probe trying to run away from those Zerglings. That probe slightly faster than, those Zerglings slightly faster than that probe. As that probe continuing to move around once again. Probe, however, getting stuck up there just a little bit. Probe down to 5 hit points. One more peck from that Zergling, and it should be enough, and there we go. Hatchery is now underway, currently sitting at 45 game seconds. Will be completed in just a moment, as Kyle now places a pylon on that lower point of the ramp. Kyle is currently supply locked at 26 over 26 food, currently chrono boosting that warp gate research. Perhaps he will try to go for a proxy rush in just a moment. I do not see any additional gateways, just 2 gateways so far. And he's also training up a lot of sentries and zealots so far. So one zealot here with a sentry in support should be able to hold this tight choke point fairly easily, especially with a second sentry now coming underway. So in comes a sentry now holding its own. Zealot able to deal a lot of damage. Those Zerglings will not be able to deal all too much, as now we see a Nexus being placed down by this probe. So Kyle going off for a very aggressive macro game, trying to establish an expansion here, as we now have another gateway being placed down by Kyle. So Kyle, with these additional gateways, it will be very difficult for Zerglings to try to run up this ramp. One of the benefits for Protoss is that all of their units have a relatively small radius. And so that means that Immortals, Zealots, Stalkers can all fit between this one gap right here. The only units that can't fit through it are a Colossus and an Archon. However, Colossus, because they can walk up and down ledges, it doesn't nearly matter as much. However, the Archon will not be able to get into the space if he does in fact try to merge in some Templars, Dark or High Templars. Moving over here, ArgosZenith now getting a very, very strong economy going. Now sitting on 29 harvesters, 700 minerals for Kyle. However, if my eyes did not deceive me, we now have Hallucination being researched. Hallucination, one of those abilities that's rarely ever researched. So Kyle now opening into a 5 gateway push. Now the 5 gateway has become much more popular ever since the Zealots and build time was increased from 22 to or 23 to 28 off of a warp gate, so that allows for an additional gateway to start pumping out more and more units. And this strategy seems to be mass sentries and zealots using the leftover minerals in order to get an expansion up, and then try to pump out a lot of zealots momentarily. So now going into 7, is this 7 gateways? Yeah, it will be, no, 6 gateways. We now have a Hallucination Phoenix, 2 of them moving out. So those Hallucination Phoenixes moving out in order to get some scouting down. I'm not sure if ArgosZenith knows that they're hallucinations just quite yet. If these Phoenixes do try to shoot, then obviously he'll be able to know that, just because these overlords are not going to take damage from hallucinations. A queen now making its way over here, as now we have a very, very large army of sentries and zealots moving out. We do have a lot of spine crawlers in this position, so ArgosZenith very much playing defensive with 8 spine crawlers currently being morphed into play here. We do see also a pylon in position, trying to warp in as well. It should be allow for additional stalkers to be here in just a moment. We do see an overlord now spawning creep along that backside. So he does know about this probe here. However, this pylon will be able to warp in more units. Kyle does not have that strong of economy, however, so it will depend on how on these gateways whether or not he's going to be able to warp in more and more units. Stalkers now making their way, trying to get some poking damage. Oh, unable to catch a queen in between those 2 force fields. And before, it was much easier to try to catch units in between 2 force fields and then have that queen just stuck there and then focused down by a couple of those stalkers. So more stalkers sitting here, 1 creep tumor out here. And now another hallucination now being moved out. So that hallucination now moving out. However, ArgosZenith does have a spire. So we are going into spire tech. No roach warren ever. Just mass spine crawlers into spires. And into a spire. So now Kyle deciding to warp in or a pylon here, and with this pylon he will be able to warp in zealots and sentries onto this high ground with the help of a phoenix. And there we go, warping in 6 zealots already into the position, and now going to start dealing damage towards the spire. The spire may get taken down here, so this is going to be a lot of damage to try to prevent. The spire only has 600 hit points, and there it goes, unable to get that transfusion off from those queens. So the zealots will be able to finish down, perhaps take down 1 or 2 of those queens before it gets taken down, before those zealots are taken down. Spine crawlers now joining in on that fight. That is a very, very heavy loss for ArgosZenith. Spires take a normally long amount of time to build, 100 units of time in order to build that. However, as soon as you build that, you are able to train up as many mutalisks as you have larvae. So that's the reason why ArgosZenith should be throwing down another spire in just a moment. No, throwing down a roach warren now. So it seems though that he is happy with the current mutalisks that he has in the air. Perhaps he thinks that those phoenixes were actually real and not hallucinations. We are now getting a forge in play. So with this forge, and we are also getting stalker blink. So blink from Kyle should allow those stalkers to deal with these mutalisks very, very easily. Stalkers have a decent amount of movement speed, 2.95, and as soon as these mutalisks try to fly in, these stalkers should be able to come in along that backside, blink, and try to get some damage in there. There goes 1 or 2 sets of attacks. Guardian Shield now making their way up, trying to protect some of those probes. Probes have been protected, and now those mutalisks once again being pulled away towards that north side. We are getting the level 1 weapons upgrade, and now warping in some additional stalkers once again. So more mutalisks will be coming back in from the north. Stalkers now moving out. Mutalisks are going to get a free run on more of these probes here. Stalkers now trying to perhaps make their way over here. We'll be able to get off a couple blinks, however, no cooldown. Oh, 2 additional stalkers now being warped in as well. So those stalkers should be enough to prevent any harassment, and ArgosZenith may just be trying to buy time at this stage. We do see 1 zealot sitting over here, and now we are now going to mass roaches. These roaches only have a range of 3. This is patch 1.1.1. As these units once again move out, stalkers are going to be able to blink off onto that high ground as soon as that phoenix gets into play. And there we go, blinking into that high ground, and once again blinking again. And now all that hydralisk then will get taken down very easily. Down it goes. Roach is now trying to come into position. However, there is just too many stalkers to deal with, and now pulling back once again. So Roach is able to scamper away and get into position. However, Mutalisk back over here, more and more stalkers trying to blink, able to get, unable to get that last shot in on that Mutalisk. Mutalisk with that natural regeneration, pulling back again. So mass stalker army now. Level 1 weapons upgrade nearing completion. One overlord quickly going to get shot down there. And these stalkers will be getting a 10% upgrade on their attack against Metalopolis in just a moment. So yeah, Forge has been completed on that research. I'm not researching the level 2 upgrades just quite yet, as another pylon being warped in as well. Transitioning, this is still anyone's game at this point. Army-wise, 31-25 versus 28-25. Kyle's sitting on the smaller army. However, we do see a Nidus network currently being placed down, the groove spines, and now tunneling claws. So it looks as though those roaches will be able to get in here very easily in just a moment. Those tunneling claws allowing for roaches to move while burrowed. And then we will also get a Nidus network. And here we go. Here comes a Nidus worm. I was going to say that's a perfect place for it, as ArgosZenith is known for his Nidus play. Metalopolis once again trying to just cause a lot of harassment. Stalkers are going to slowly make their way into here, trying to blink. Those Metalopolis will be forced to pull back once again, getting picked apart. However, a lot of these roaches will be able to dump into this position, and now they just want to stick in here as long as possible. Stalkers they do see that the creep is slowly coming out now, so there's going to be a war on two fronts. Metalopolis now trying to put pressure over here. Overlords on the front, and now roaches and zerglings in the back of the base, perhaps trying to just deal more and more damage. Perhaps they're going to take down some of the production buildings. Immortals will be popping out in just a second. One of these robotics facilities now taken down, as those stalkers are now stuck up on their own choke point, unable to get into this position. Kyle, really bad building placement, and now both of these roach warrens have been, these robotics facilities have been taken down. More roaches still coming in, and now even more hydralisks coming in as well. These units do have burrow, so they will be able to burrow, and as soon as they burrow, that's going to be a problem, because they will be able to burrow, regenerate those hit points, and then re-engage once again. However, now mass spine crawlers coming in through the front, so we have mass spine crawlers now coming in, going to be rooting themselves roaches, just pushing away at Kyle. Zealots now trying to deal with the army in the front of the base, and now more stalkers trying to continue to push, and ArgosZenith says Kyle is forced to lead the game as ArgosZenith says GG. So a crazy game here between KylePrime and ArgosZenith. I really like the strategy by ArgosZenith. ArgosZenith using that Nidus network and that Nidus worm popping up in the back of the base in the vents. Most Protoss players know to put a pylon or something here in order to make sure that that Nidus network is not built. However, one of the issues with Kyle's base in particular was how tight this front door choke was. I believe this additional warp gate right here is really what just was the nail in the coffin in this fight. The stalkers were trying to blink, trying to get up into the space. However, because of these building placements, a lot of the stalkers still got left behind on that low ground. So Kyle trying to make sure that Zerglings were unable to run through in a single file line, perhaps run into the base to deal damage to those probes, had his own issue with stalkers and sentries getting stuck. Then when the aggression was being laid down on the front or on the back of the base, we saw a transition and a movement of mass spine crawlers. So all the spine crawlers from the main expansion here were then transferred over into this location in order to start putting pressure on these warp gates. And that was just too much for Kyle. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this crazy tactic 1v1 game here on Metalopolis between KylePrime and ArgosZenith. Hope to see you guys on Battle.net.